A lot of my research is focused on both dating and sexual communication, which when most people hear that, they're just a little bit shocked. But the one thing about it is that most of my research is concentrating on that area because a dating relationship, for example, research has shown that the communication that you start at the beginning of the relationship, actually in the long term, is what dictates how a couple will communicate over the long run. So by being able to study how a couple initially negotiates their individual identity as well as their identity as a couple, plays a big role in the couple as a whole. In particular, a lot of my research has looked at the correlation between media and our dating expectations. So in particular, what I've looked at is shows like The Bachelor. Well, although people kind of make fun of the show The Bachelor, my research has shown that it actually has a dramatic impact on how women construct what it means to date in today's society. And even though we think that we are much more progressive in our dating, a lot of our research still looks to the idea of wanting that romantic fairy tale of the prince and the princess and the such. And shows like this simply reiterate the importance of that type of a fairy tale or that type of a script for our dating itself. Other parts of my research has really looked at our current dating scripts. And again, kind of going back to what I was talking about with the reality television, is that even though when we talk about dating nowadays, we talk about it as being, again, much more progressive in nature, and that we don't expect for a man, for example, to take a much more dominant role, and we expect women to be much more dominant within the relationship. All of the research has shown is that we still want the dating relationship that is very typical of the 1950s heterosexual dating script, in that the man takes a very dominant and active role, while the woman takes very much a submissive and reactive role. So it creates this unusual juxtaposition between what we think we should be doing and what we actually want. And when there's that violation there, it actually in the long run tends to decrease our satisfactions with our relationships themselves. When I actually did my dissertation, which was surrounding The Bachelor, I actually went and watched The Bachelor with groups of women. And while it seems a little creepy that I was watching television and studying these women while they were watching the show, it was definitely a way in which I was able to integrate myself into the group and really find the intricacies of not only the group dynamics, but also how they specifically talked about the show and how they used that to construct their expectations. A lot of my other research, I do interviews or I do surveys and the such, but definitely the experience of being part of these groups was very unique, but gave me a really rich and detailed perspective of the group dynamics as well as the construction that was going on. I think that my research is important because, like I was saying before, not only does this create the groundwork for the rest of a relationship, but it also tends to be a remarkably understudied part of romantic relationships. A lot of times we focus on long-term relationships and couples and things like that, but we don't focus on what happens at the beginning of a relationship. And it is really that beginning of the relationship that plays such a crucial role, again, in the long-term aspect. And as well, when you think about things like dating or sexual communication, it tends to be things that people aren't quite as comfortable talking about. We like to think that we like to talk about these things, but in the long run, we really don't. And so by pushing people to discuss these topics, it really opens up our dialogue in such a way to promote a better understanding overall. It's hard not to become interested in this area of research because, you know, as I was saying, this is something that we all do at some point in time. And so it was definitely something that I was interested in understanding, not only my own relationships, but also the relationships of all my family and friends around me. And so it was definitely a starting point, and obviously is something that's very interesting to teach about as well. And my students obviously have a lot of interest in learning about their own relationships.